The planet Lysara 9 was unlike anything Captain Ryland Voss had ever seen. From orbit, it looked like a jewel in the darkness of space, glowing softly with colors that shifted like liquid light. Vast forests of crystal-like trees reflected the sun in every direction, and rivers of liquid sapphire ran through valleys that seemed untouched by time. His crew of human explorers had never expected to find life here, and yet they had. Ryland stood on the observation deck of the Odyssey, his eyes scanning the strange world below. Beside him, Lieutenant Mara Chen adjusted the ship's sensors. Her brow furrowed in concern. "Captain," she said, her voice quiet but firm, "the readings are stable. But there's unusual energy coming from the northern hemisphere. It's organic, but not like anything we've cataloged." Ryland nodded, already feeling a pull in his chest. There was something alive there, something that called to him, though he did not know why. "Prepare the landing team," he ordered. "We need to see this up close. Suits and weapons ready. We don't know what we're walking into." By the time the team touched down on the surface, the air was thick with a faint glow, warm and slightly sweet. The Illyrians, the planet's native species, emerged from the crystalline forest as if they had been waiting. They were small, delicate beings with translucent skin that shimmered faintly in the sunlight. Their large eyes glowed softly in blue and green, and their movements were graceful, almost like they were dancing even when standing still. The humans were cautious, holding their scanners steady. One misstep could cause panic. Ryland stepped forward, hands open in a gesture of peace. "We come in peace," he said clearly. "We are explorers from Earth. We mean no harm." The Illyrians watched him silently. Then from the crowd, a small figure stepped forward, a child no more than 10 years old. Her skin sparkled like the forest around them, and her eyes were filled with fear and curiosity. She held her hands close to her chest, clutching something small, a glowing object that seemed to pulse with light. Ryland's heart tightened. There was no way to explain why, but he felt an instant connection to this child. He could see the innocence and vulnerability in her eyes, and he knew instinctively that he could not let anything happen to her. Before he could move closer, a violent sound shattered the moment. A fleet of ships, dark and jagged, burst from the sky. The Zirans had arrived. They were unlike any life Ryland had encountered. Their forms were angular and armored, their eyes black and cold. They moved with ruthless precision, their weapons firing streams of energy that cut through the forest with terrifying efficiency. "Take cover," Ryland shouted, drawing his rifle. The humans scattered, returning fire. The Illyrians, defenseless and fragile, froze in terror. Through the chaos, Ryland spotted the child again. She was cornered, backed into a clearing by 3 Ziran soldiers. They raised their weapons, aiming directly at her. Ryland's stomach dropped. Without thinking, he sprinted toward her, dodging blasts and fallen debris. One of the Zirans lunged at him, but Ryland pushed past, his mind only on the girl. "You're safe," he called, sliding in front of her. "Stay behind me!" The Zirans fired again. One arrow, glowing with dark energy, struck Ryland in the shoulder. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the pain. He knew there was no time. Another arrow streaked toward the child, and in that instant Ryland threw himself fully into the path, taking the blow. The poison spread quickly through his veins. His vision blurred, and a strange warmth spread through his body. He could hear the Zirans shouting in their harsh language, but the words were meaningless to him. All that mattered was the girl, her small hand trembling as she reached for him. "Go! Run!" he shouted, forcing his voice through the growing weakness in his limbs. The child hesitated, her eyes wide with fear. Ryland smiled weakly, trying to give her courage. "You are strong," he whispered. "You can survive. I believe in you." And then darkness claimed him. Ryland woke to a dim, golden light. His head throbbed, and his body felt strange, heavier yet lighter at the same time. He tried to move, but every attempt brought waves of pain. He blinked, forcing his eyes open, and the sight before him stole his breath. The forest had changed. The trees now towered impossibly high, their crystal leaves humming softly with energy. Strange plants with glowing flowers grew in perfect circles, and the ground beneath him pulsed like a living organism. He realized he was lying on a soft bed of moss that seemed to glow beneath his body. A gentle voice called his name. "Captain Voss?" He turned his head weakly. There, kneeling before him, was the child he had saved, or rather someone who looked exactly like her but older. Her translucent skin glowed softly, and her eyes, his eyes remembered them clearly, held a mixture of awe, relief, and something deeper he could not name. You're alive, she whispered. I thought I had lost you forever. Ryland tried to speak, but his voice was rough like sandpaper. What happened? The woman, now clearly an adult, took a deep breath. 50 years passed, Captain. 50 years. The poison. It should have killed you, but the Illyrians saved you. We used every tool we had to keep you alive. Ryland's mind struggled to understand. 50 years? He had closed his eyes for only moments, or so he thought. The world he had left behind, the crew he had fought beside, must all be gone. The woman placed a hand gently on his arm. You saved me that day. You gave me life when nothing else could. Because of you, the Illyrians survived and our civilization grew stronger. We would not exist if not for your courage. Ryland's heart ached with a mixture of grief and awe. The child he had risked everything for was now a leader among her people, and she had remembered him. Somehow she had carried the memory of his sacrifice for all those years. Why am I here? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. To awaken you, she said simply. The Zirans, they were gone for a time, but remnants are returning. We need you, Captain. Your knowledge, your courage. Our people need it. Ryland tried to sit up fully, testing his strength. His body felt alien to him, healed but not quite human in the way he remembered. He looked down at his hands, which were steady now, glowing faintly as if the planet itself was lending him strength. The woman, Leora, rose gracefully to her feet. She motioned for him to follow. There is much to explain, Captain. You must understand what has happened in your absence. As he stood, leaning on her guidance, Ryland glanced around at the Illyrian city emerging from the forest. Towering structures of crystal and light stretched toward the sky, pulsing with energy. Ships hovered silently above, their forms elegant and fluid, a blend of organic and technological marvels. It was a city that had grown from the seeds he had planted with his sacrifice, and in that moment, Ryland understood something profound. His courage, his willingness to act for someone else, had changed the course of an entire civilization. One act, one decision to protect a child had created ripples that grew into waves of hope, innovation, and survival. Leora reached out again, taking his hand. We are ready, Captain. But first, you must rest. Your strength has returned, but the journey ahead will demand more than you realize. As Ryland allowed himself to be guided through the city, he felt a strange warmth in his chest. The weight of 50 years, the loss, the uncertainty, it all seemed to lift slightly. He had been given a second chance, a new purpose, and he would not waste it. He glanced at Leora one last time as they entered a chamber filled with soft golden light. Her eyes met his, unwavering and full of determination. She knelt again, a gesture of respect and gratitude, reminding him of the day he had first saved her life. In that moment, Ryland made a silent vow. Whatever came next, he would face it. For her, for the Illyrians, for humanity. And so began the long awakening of a hero who had given everything, only to find that his sacrifice had not been in vain. Ryland's first days awake were filled with confusion. The city of Lysara 9 stretched endlessly around him, a landscape of glowing spires and softly humming pathways. Every surface shimmered, as if alive. Trees of crystal bent gracefully toward the sunlight. Rivers of liquid sapphire wound through the streets, and creatures unlike anything he had seen before wandered openly, coexisting in perfect harmony. Everywhere he looked, Illyrians moved with purpose. They were taller than he remembered, more confident, their bioluminescent markings bright and proud. And yet, despite the beauty, there was tension. Whispers of a returning threat. The Ziran remnants had rippled through their cities. Leora guided him carefully through the streets. She walked with grace, yet her steps carried authority. Humans were rare here now, and even among the Illyrians, Ryland's presence drew stares and reverence. Children stopped to point and murmur, elders bowed as he passed. Somehow, 50 years of absence had turned him into a legend, though he remembered only a single desperate act of courage. You must understand, Leora said softly as they entered a chamber at the heart of the city. Time has moved differently for you. The poison should have ended your life, but our people discovered a way to preserve it within your body, holding you in stasis while your body healed. You slept through decades, Captain, while Lysara 9 grew and changed. Rylan ran his hands over a table glowing with holographic projections. Stars, planets, and swirling energy patterns rotated in the air above it. I can't believe it. 50 years? My crew. His voice faltered. Memories of his team, of the battle, of the faces he had trusted flashed in his mind. They were gone. You are not alone, Leora said, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. Your sacrifice saved more than my life. It saved our civilization. And now, you are here because we need you again. Rylan swallowed hard. The weight of his absence, of the years he had missed, pressed on him. How have you survived? The Zirans. Leora's eyes hardened. We adapted. We learned from your courage, Captain. We built our defenses, strengthened our cities, and trained our people. But the Zirans are not gone. Remnants have been gathering, and they will return soon. That is why you must awaken now. Rylan nodded slowly. He had faced death before, but nothing like this. These were beings who had survived an enemy over decades, shaped by his own act. And now, they were counting on him again. Over the next few days, Rylan began to explore Lysara 9 under Leora's guidance. The Illyrians had achieved wonders beyond imagination. Their technology merged seamlessly with their biology. Ships floated without engines, propelled by energy drawn from the very planet itself. Buildings grew organically from the ground, shaped by thought as much as by construction. And the Illyrians themselves had grown in ways Rylan struggled to comprehend, stronger, faster, and smarter, yet still deeply compassionate. How did you do all this? Rylan asked one evening, watching bioluminescent lights flow through a city street like liquid ribbons. 50 years. This entire civilization. Leora smiled softly. We learned. Your sacrifice gave us hope. Hope gave us courage. Courage gave us progress. Every invention, every innovation, every victory started with one choice you made: to protect a child, to act for someone else without hesitation. Rylan felt a strange pride, but it was mixed with sorrow. So much time had passed, and he had been missing from it all. And my crew? The others? They gave their lives with honor, Leora said gently. We remember them. Your courage inspired others, even those who did not survive. You are part of our history now, Captain, as much as you are a part of the future. The weight of her words settled on him. He realized that heroism was not about surviving or returning. It was about the lives touched, the ripples created by a single act of bravery. He had been a hero in that moment, but he was learning that heroism also lived in the aftermath, in what others did with the gift of life he had given. One evening, Rylan and Leora visited a training ground on the edge of the forest. Illyrian children practiced combat skills, their movements fluid and precise. They trained not to fight, he realized, but to defend, to protect, to preserve life. And among them he saw the smallest children carrying replicas of human tools, weapons, and devices, learning the lessons he had unknowingly taught decades ago. These children, and they know you saved them? Rylan asked, watching a young Illyrian dodge a practice beam and return it with surprising accuracy. They know your story, Leora said. It is told in every home, in every school, in every city. They know of the human who risked his life for a child he barely knew, and they learn from it. Courage, Captain. It is contagious. Rylan felt warmth in his chest. Somehow, in his absence, something good had grown, something strong, something alive, and it was all connected to a single moment, a choice he had made without thinking. Days passed and Rylan grew stronger. His body, preserved by the Illyrians, healed completely. Yet the poison had left subtle changes. His reflexes were sharper, his senses more acute. Leora explained that the Illyrians had used their technology not just to heal him, but to enhance him subtly, blending human endurance with Illyrian adaptability. You are more than you were before, Leora said, her eyes studying him closely. Not just in strength, but in purpose. You have been given a second chance, Captain, and this time your choices will shape not just a life, but an entire civilization. Rylan nodded. The weight of responsibility pressed on him, but he welcomed it. He had spent his life exploring the stars, seeking adventure and knowledge. Now he had a new mission: to defend, to guide, and to protect. As he trained, he noticed the city itself seemed to respond to him. Pathways lit as he walked, vehicles shifted silently to accommodate him, and children watched with awe. The human's ability to act, to change fate through courage, seemed mirrored in every aspect of Illyrian life. One afternoon, Leora took him to a chamber deep within the city. It was circular, filled with holographic projections of the surrounding space. Stars, planets, and distant fleets were displayed, rotating slowly in golden light. "This is our council room," Leora explained. "From here, we monitor threats to Lysera 9. We have been tracking the Xiran remnants. They have been regrouping near the outer moons. Soon they will come for us again." Rylan studied the projections carefully. The Xirans had evolved too. Their ships were larger, faster, more aggressive, but they lacked something humans had always relied on: unpredictability, strategy, courage, and unity. Those were weapons they could not replicate easily. "You will help us plan," Leora said, her eyes firm. "Your knowledge of tactics, your experience in battle, it is invaluable. We cannot face them without you." Rylan nodded, feeling the old fire ignite within him. He had been given a second chance, and he would not waste it. "Then we prepare," he said, his voice steady, "and we win." In the following weeks, Rylan immersed himself in Illyrian life. He trained with their warriors, studied their technology, and walked through the forests where he had first sacrificed himself. Everywhere he went, he felt the presence of the past, memories of that day, the child, the arrows, the poison. But he also saw the future, strong, bright, and alive. One evening, as he walked through the glowing city streets, he paused to watch the sky. A cluster of stars blinked in formation, distant and cold, yet full of potential. Leora joined him silently, her presence a calm reminder of why he was here. "You are ready," she said softly. "Not just for the Xirans, but for what comes after. Our people, they need hope, they need courage, and you have given them both twice now." Rylan looked at her, understanding the weight of her words. 50 years had passed, yet the spirit of humanity, the ability to act selflessly and boldly, had endured. It lived on in her, in the Illyrians, and now it lived again in him. He took a deep breath, feeling the air of Lysera 9 fill his lungs. The forest hummed, the city pulsed, and the stars above whispered promises of adventure, of challenge, of purpose. He was no longer just a human explorer. He was a guardian, a teacher, and a symbol of hope. And though he did not yet know the trials ahead, he understood this truth clearly. Courage, once given, could never be taken back. It grew, it spread, and it became a legacy. As the night settled over Lysera 9, Rylan and Leora stood together, looking out over the glowing city. The long sleep was over. A new chapter had begun, and the universe, vast and mysterious, waited for the human who had dared to act for others 50 years ago. And now, again. The sky above Lysera 9 was no longer peaceful. Strange ripples of energy spread through the atmosphere, hinting at movement beyond the planet. Rylan stood at the observation deck of the Illyrian Council Tower, overlooking the glowing city. His eyes narrowed as he studied the distant horizon. Something was coming. Leora appeared beside him, her face calm but firm. "They are here," she said. "The Xiran remnants. We have detected several ships leaving the outer moons. They are regrouping faster than we expected." Rylan clenched his fists. He had prepared for this, trained the Illyrians in human tactics, studied the Xiran patterns, yet the reality of an approaching invasion pressed on him like a physical weight. The stakes were enormous. These were not simple skirmishes. These were beings who had evolved to destroy civilizations, and they would not hesitate. "We have fortified the cities, Captain," Leora continued. "Our people are ready. But your knowledge of human strategies gives us an advantage. They will not expect the tactics you used in your battles long ago. Ryland's mind flashed back to his human crew, to the moments of decision in battle, the instincts that had saved lives. He realized something important. Courage was not enough. Strategy and preparation were equally vital. The Illyrians had strength, speed, and intelligence, but they had never faced the Zirans directly in war. They would need guidance. Then we begin, he said firmly. I need to see the training grounds. The training grounds were unlike anything Ryland had imagined. Fields of crystalline structures stretched for miles, dotted with Illyrian warriors practicing formations and maneuvers. Children, young adults, and older warriors moved with precision, their glowing bodies weaving through simulated attacks. Weapons were strange to human eyes. Some resembled energy spears. Others projected beams of light, but each one required control, skill, and intelligence. Ryland observed quietly, his mind analyzing each move, each formation. They are strong, he murmured, but they lack experience in real battle. They rely on instinct too much, Leora followed his gaze. That is why you are here, Captain. Show them how to anticipate, how to plan, how to act as one. Our survival depends on it, Ryland nodded. He began to teach, combining his human knowledge with their unique abilities. He introduced concepts of ambushes, coordinated attacks, and layered defenses. Illyrians absorbed his lessons quickly, adapting them to their abilities. Their bodies were faster, their senses sharper, and their minds capable of understanding complex strategies instantly. But more than that, they had courage. The courage he had inspired decades ago. Days passed in intense preparation. Ryland watched the Illyrians grow not just in skill, but in confidence. He began to recognize faces he remembered, children who had survived the original Ziran attack, now young adults, leaders in their own right. Among them, Leora stood out, her movements precise and commanding. He had saved her as a child, but now she had become a hero in her own right. You've done well, he told her one evening. You've taken what you learned from me and made it your own. That is the mark of a true leader. Leora smiled, though her eyes were serious. I learned from your courage, Captain. Now it is my turn to guide others. Then the day came. The Ziran fleet appeared on the horizon, dark and jagged against the glowing sky. Ryland and Leora watched as the ships descended, spreading across the atmosphere like shadows over Lysera 9. The Illyrians held their ground, forming formations Ryland had taught them, their bodies glowing with readiness. Ryland gave orders calmly yet firmly. Split into 3 groups. Archers to the east and west ridges, energy units in the center flanking units ready to respond. Move as one. Predict their moves, don't react to them. The battle began with a burst of light. The Zirans fired energy beams that shattered crystalline trees and tore through the ground. Illyrians responded with precision, using their speed and agility to deflect attacks and counter with glowing projectiles. Ryland's heart raced, but his mind remained clear. He was guiding them like a conductor, orchestrating a symphony of defense and counterattack. One Ziran ship broke through the front line, heading toward the central city. Ryland spotted it instantly. Focus on the center, he shouted.
Don't let them reach the city.
Leora and her flanking units moved swiftly, forming a barrier. She executed maneuvers Ryland had taught her decades ago, anticipating the Ziran ship's path. With precision, they forced it into a trap, disabling it before it could reach the city. Ryland felt a surge of pride. These were his lessons in action, amplified by the strength and courage of a civilization he had once saved as a single man. The battle raged for hours. Zirans descended in waves, testing the Illyrian defenses, but Ryland's strategies held. He noticed patterns in their attacks, predicting their next moves. He directed the Illyrians to adjust formations, exploit weaknesses, and strike decisively. The humans' influence was undeniable, yet the Illyrians' natural abilities made every tactic more effective than he could have imagined. Amid the chaos, Ryland saw Leora fighting alongside her people. She moved with grace and determination, glowing like a beacon of hope. He realized then that courage, once inspired, could grow beyond a single individual. She was no longer the child he had saved. She was a leader, a protector, a symbol of all that humans and Illyrians could achieve together. Then, a new threat emerged. A massive Ziran ship, larger and more powerful than the others, descended from the sky. Its energy beams were stronger, its armor nearly impenetrable. Ryland knew this was a turning point. Focus fire on the weak points, he commanded. Leora, lead the counterattack. I will draw their attention away. He charged forward, drawing the massive ship's fire. The Illyrians moved as one, their coordinated attacks striking the ship where Rylan had predicted. The Ziran vessel shuddered, its energy shields flickering. Rylan felt the familiar thrill of battle, the rush of strategy, the knowledge that courage and intelligence together could overcome even the most daunting foe. Every decision mattered, every moment was critical, and yet he felt calm. This was what he had trained for, what he had waited for, even in his long sleep. As the massive ship faltered, Leora and her forces executed a final maneuver. Using energy channels through the city and forest, they created a trap that immobilized the ship. With coordinated strikes, they disabled it completely. The Zirans retreated, scattering across space, defeated but not destroyed. Rylan stood among the Illyrians, breathing heavily but proud. He looked at Leora, kneeling momentarily to catch her breath, and felt a strange sense of completion. 50 years ago, he had saved her as a child. Now together they had defended an entire civilization. You've done it, he said quietly. We did it. Leora rose slowly, her eyes meeting his. We did it together, Captain. Your courage gave us the foundation. Our strength made it real. Rylan smiled. He realized something profound. Heroism was not about a single act, but about inspiring others to act with courage. The Illyrians had taken his sacrifice and transformed it into strength, strategy, and hope. And now they were capable of defending themselves and their world. The city of Lysara 9 celebrated that night. Lights shimmered across the crystalline structures, and Illyrians moved freely through the streets, singing and sharing stories of bravery. Rylan walked among them quietly, feeling both alien and at home. He had returned to a world that had grown beyond his imagination, yet he had a role to play. Leora joined him on a balcony overlooking the city. There will be more threats, she said softly. The Zirans will not forget this defeat. But now we know we can stand against them. We know we can survive, Rylan nodded. And we will. Together. She smiled, placing her hand on his arm. Your legacy is alive, Captain. You once saved a child, but you have given this civilization much more than life. You have given hope, courage, and a future. Rylan felt the weight of those words, yet he embraced it. He understood now that heroism was timeless. One act could change the future, and courage, once sown, could grow into a force beyond measure. As the stars glittered above Lysara 9, Rylan looked toward the horizon. The Zirans might return, but the Illyrians, guided by his lessons and inspired by his courage, were ready. And he would stand with them, not just as a human, but as a symbol of what humanity could achieve. Bravery, compassion, and unwavering determination in the face of any threat. The test of time had begun, and humanity, through him, had passed it with honor. The morning sky of Lysara 9 was painted with colors that seemed impossible. Golden sunlight streaming through clouds of iridescent mist, reflecting off the crystal forests and glowing rivers below. For a moment the world looked calm, almost peaceful, but Rylan knew the peace was fragile. The Zirans were regrouping, and this time they would not show mercy. Rylan stood at the observation tower with Leora beside him. Together they watched the horizon, their eyes scanning for movement. Ships streaked silently through space, dark and angular, their energy shields shimmering like cold fire. The remnants of the Zirans were returning. They are stronger than before, Leora said, her voice steady. They have learned from our defenses. They will try to overwhelm us, Rylan clenched his fists. He had faced impossible odds before, but the weight of responsibility pressed heavily upon him. This was no longer just about saving a child. This was about defending a civilization he had once risked his life for, a civilization that had grown stronger because of that very act. We have prepared, he said, his voice calm but firm. We know their patterns and we know our strengths. This time, we fight not just for survival, but for the future of Lysara 9. The Illyrians moved swiftly, organizing into formations Rylan had designed. He had trained them for weeks, blending human strategy with their natural abilities. Archers and energy units took their positions, flanking squads prepared to intercept, and Leora led the central force, glowing with determination and confidence. Rylan inspected the defenses one last time. The city's barriers pulsed with energy, creating shields that could absorb the Ziran attacks. Traps and channels had been set across the forests and rivers, ready to immobilize enemy ships. But he knew that strategy alone would not be enough. Courage and decisiveness would tip the balance. The first Xiran ships appeared at the edge of the atmosphere, sleek and dark, moving with terrifying speed. Rylan gave the signal. The Illyrians responded instantly, forming a living wall of light and energy, their glowing bodies reflecting the city's shimmering light. The battle began. Xiran weapons fired in rapid bursts, shattering trees and sending waves of energy across the fields. The Illyrians moved with precision, their attacks synchronized perfectly, striking at weak points in the enemy formations. Rylan ran along the front lines, directing units, predicting moves, and guiding the defenders. His human experience made the difference between hesitation and decisive action. One Xiran ship broke through the outer defenses, targeting the city's main energy core. Rylan spotted it immediately. "Focus fire on the central ship," he shouted. "Do not let it reach the core." Leora led the counterattack, weaving through the battlefield with unmatched skill. She used every tactic Rylan had taught her, anticipating the enemy's movements, guiding her units to strike with precision. Together they forced the Xiran ship into a trap, disabling its weapons before it could harm the city. Rylan felt a surge of pride. The Illyrians had grown stronger, faster, smarter. The child he had saved decades ago had become a leader capable of guiding an entire civilization through battle. Courage, once sparked, had grown beyond him. Hours passed and the Xirans pressed harder. Waves of ships descended from space, attempting to overwhelm the Illyrians. But Rylan's tactics, combined with the Illyrians' natural agility and energy abilities, held firm. They moved as one, a living force of strategy and bravery. Rylan noticed a new pattern. The Xirans had grown more aggressive, but they were predictable in their aggression. "Use their strength against them," he called. "Channel them into the traps. Do not fight blindly, lead them." The Illyrians responded instantly, herding the enemy through energy barriers and forests lined with traps. One by one, the Xiran ships were disabled or captured. Their retreat became chaotic, disorganized, their formations breaking apart. Amid the chaos, Rylan saw Leora confronting a massive Xiran flagship. It hovered menacingly over the city, its energy shields pulsating. Leora raised her staff, glowing with energy, and commanded her units to strike at the vessel's weak points. Rylan knew what he had to do. "I'll draw its attention," he said. Without hesitation, he charged forward, moving across the battlefield with agility he had never known in his human years. Energy beams struck around him, but he dodged and weaved, luring the massive ship into the trap Leora had set. The flagship became trapped in a network of energy channels, immobilized. Leora's forces converged, striking with coordinated precision. The ship shuddered and exploded in a brilliant flash of light, scattering the remaining Xiran forces across space. The battlefield fell silent. Smoke rose from the forests. The rivers glimmered softly in the aftermath, and the Illyrians cheered, their bodies glowing brighter than ever. Rylan stood among them, breathing heavily, but his heart was light. He looked at Leora, kneeling momentarily in exhaustion, and felt a sense of completion. He had saved her as a child, guided her as a leader, and together they had defended a civilization. "You have done it," he said quietly. "We have done it together." Leora rose, her eyes shining. "It is not just our victory, Captain. It is yours too. Your courage gave us the spark. Our strength made it real. And now we are ready for whatever comes next," Rylan nodded. He realized something profound. Heroism was not measured by a single act, but by the way it inspired others. Courage once sown could grow into a force beyond imagination. The Illyrians gathered to celebrate, their city alive with light and song. Rylan walked among them quietly, observing the joy, the gratitude, and the pride in their eyes. Children ran past him, imitating his movements, training with energy tools, learning courage through play. Adults shared stories of the battle, of bravery and strategy, of how one human had changed the course of their civilization. That evening, Rylan and Leora stood together on a balcony overlooking the city. The rivers reflected the light of thousands of crystals. The forest pulsed gently with energy, and the stars above shimmered like distant fires. "There will be more challenges," Leora said softly. "The Xirans may return, or other threats may come. But now we know we can survive. We know we can defend ourselves, Rylan smiled. And we will. Together. You've proven that courage is not a gift for one person. It can shape the future for many. She placed her hand on his arm. Your legacy is alive, Captain. You saved a child 50 years ago, and now you have saved a civilization. That is a gift beyond measure. Rylan felt the weight of her words. He had once thought heroism was about daring acts, about bravery in the moment. But now he understood. True heroism was about the ripple effect. The lives touched, the courage inspired. The civilization built from a single selfless act. He thought of his crew, of the humans who had fought beside him long ago. He realized that even in absence, humanity could endure. Courage, compassion, and the willingness to act for others were not bound by time or species. They lived on in the hearts of those touched by it. In the days that followed, Scifi began rebuilding from the damage of the battle. Rylan trained with the Illyrians, sharing knowledge, strengthening defenses, and preparing for a future that would inevitably bring new challenges. Yet he felt a sense of peace. The child he had saved, now a leader of her people, had carried his legacy forward with honor. He watched Leora as she trained others, teaching them strategy, courage, and unity. She was no longer dependent on him. She had grown beyond him, and yet he was proud. He realized that sometimes the greatest gift a hero can give is the chance for others to shine. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Leora knelt once more before Rylan. It was a gesture of gratitude, respect, and acknowledgement of the man who had risked everything for her life. Rylan gently helped her stand, and together they looked toward the future. The universe is vast, he said quietly. There will always be challenges, but humanity, and those inspired by humanity, will always rise. Leora nodded. And thanks to you, Captain, Scifi will always have hope. Courage has a legacy, and it will endure. Rylan smiled, feeling a deep warmth in his chest. He had lived a life of exploration, sacrifice, and rediscovery. He had faced death, long slumbered, and awakened to find that one act of courage had shaped an entire world. And in that moment, he understood the essence of humanity, not the strength of a single person, but the power of courage, compassion, and the willingness to act for others, no matter the cost. As the stars shone over Scifi, Rylan and Leora stood together, ready to face whatever came next. The Zirans may return, challenges may arise, but the legacy of courage born from one selfless act would endure forever, and the universe, vast and mysterious, would witness the proof of humanity, its bravery, its heart, and its unstoppable spirit.